Let's break down how to farm both Kuva Liches and Sisters of Parvos as easy as possible. While they are different, most of the steps to farm them are essentially the same, but I'll point out where the farms are different. This may be one of the worst grinds in the game, but you will get some insanely strong weapons to boost your power, which is why you won't be able to hunt them until much later in the game, after completing the War Within and Rising Tide story quests. But long before you even think to start hunting them, you should be farming massive amounts of Requiem Relics. These are special Kuva relics with Requiem mods as their silver reward. There are 4 relics with 2 different Requiem mods on each relic. This is one of the uses for that weird wristblade thing called the Parazon in your arsenal. These mods are part of a random 3-mod code you'll put on the top row of your Parazon that you'll have to discover and test as part of the main gameplay loop. But to actually farm the Requiem relics, you'll need to farm the hourly Kuva Flood and Kuva Siphon missions available after the War Within that show up on random planets. Kuva Floods have a guaranteed relic drop, while Siphons are only a 50% chance, but if your gear is too weak to take on the level 100 enemies in the Flood, you shouldn't really be attempting the hunt at all, as a max level Lich or Sister will be very scary. So start farming your Kuva missions as early and as often as you can. Once you've beat a bunch of Liches, you'll start to accumulate a stockpile, as their minions, the Thralls and Hounds, have a 5% chance to drop them. Eventually you'll never have to do Kuva missions again. Floods and Siphons are technically the same. Just a normal mission that'll spawn a Kuva Siphon that'll be marked. Every few seconds, one of the 4 braids on the Siphon will be pulled in a specific direction. If you follow where the braid is pointing, you'll find a cloud of Kuva that has to be shot by your operator or void dash through. Do this 4 times to complete the Siphon, but thankfully you can miss it 7 times and still succeed. To actually crack your Requiem relics, go to the Void Fissures tab and you'll find special Requiem fissures on the Kuva Fortress. These function the exact same as any fissure mission, and obviously try to do them in a full squad for better odds. Once you have a bunch of relics and can get at least 1 of every Requiem mod, now you have to worry about your Progenitor. When you go to summon Liches or Sisters, the frame you have equipped will change the innate element that the weapon has built in. Ember gives fire, Frost gives cold, you get the idea. Honestly, just get used to googling WARFRAME Lich Progenitor, as you get 1 shot to choose the right element, so you should double check the list just to be safe. To summon a Kuva Lich, you just have to play any Grineer mission over level 20, but I recommend Cassini, the capture mission on Saturn. You'll be doing a lot of runs to get the right weapon, so you may get some Orokin cells on the way. After completing the objective, you'll get a spawn notification similar to the Stalker, and if you kill a bunch of enemies, a Kuva Larvling will spawn. When killed, it'll show you what weapon you'll get above their head, and you have to actually hold down the interact button to stab the Larvling and summon the Lich. Summoning a Sister of Parvos is much worse. You have to use a Zenith Granum Crown to beat level 1 of the Granum Void. That's found on a Corpus ship at the Golden Hands, which requires completing the Deadlock Protocol to play. Then a candidate will spawn that follows the same summoning rules as the Kuva Larvlings. I suggest Hydra on Pluto because it's the highest level area, so when Corpus Treasurers spawn after 5 minutes, they'll drop more Zenith Granum Crowns to refresh your stock. For both Liches and Sisters, if the little dude has the wrong weapon, just finish the mission as normal. Not choosing a weapon and finishing the mission will remove the weapon that was just shown from the table, making it easier to get the weapon you actually want. Now that you've summoned the Lich or Sister of your choice, you have to hunt them across the star chart. The main gameplay is just normal missions, where minions called Lich Thralls or Sisters Hounds will need to be killed. You'll earn Requiem Murmurs to discover which Requiem mods will solve the code, but not the order of the mods. This is one of the only real differences. Liches spawn more Thralls that give less Murmur, while Sisters spawn less Hounds that give a ton of Murmur, which means you'll get more Requiem relics from Liches than Sisters. There's really only one secret trick I can share to speed up the hunt, but it's not magic and may be impossible for most people who are just starting. The secret involves the actual testing of your Requiem mods. Basically, after I've done dozens and dozens of hunts, I realized that your Lich or Sister almost always spawns in the same mission that you complete your Murmur. And even though Liches and Sisters are different, it ended up being true for both. That Murmur will reveal one of the Requiem mods that could be in any of the 3 slots. So what happens is, it'll spawn before you can actually see what the completed Murmur is, So if you take them down and stab them, or down them 3 times, they'll leave and level up, and waste that chance to test one of your murmurs. Now my secret is that if you completely ignore the Lich or Sister, either never attacking it or only downing it 2 or less times, you can leave the mission, learn the murmur, and then face them again to actually take advantage of that guess. This happens again as they level up too, but it's the most common only on the first level. But the reason I say this is impossible for most people is that they need a squad for support, and ignoring a Lich or Sister is just never going to happen in a squad. From experience, your teammates are going to instantly target every Lich, forcing you to stab them or just waste the opportunity completely. But it's not actually that bad. When your teammates stab their Liches, it'll give you some extra murmur. The spawning rules I mentioned still generally apply, but you may get lucky and learn your murmur early. So if you've already got some high level, strong gear and a good build and playstyle, I would suggest doing all your Liches and Sisters solo, as you'll get basically the same murmurs while saving maybe 1 or 2 failed attempts. This method still beats Liches fast enough to do a bunch in one day. The other small and much less important secret I can provide is the order of missions to do on each planet. Rule number 1, if you're playing efficiently and taking your time to wait for spawns, you will never have to play an interception mission to progress. Sometimes if you ignore your Lich or Sister like I mentioned, they wait quite a while to show up again, but generally there's always enough missions on each planet to avoid interception and spy, or really any 2 missions you don't like. The only missions I would suggest starting with as a target are defense and mobile defense, because Liches and Sisters can do pretty big damage, especially against mobile defense targets. The spawn counts in those missions are also pretty standard, similar to survival and exterminate, which I always go for next. And lastly are the captures, sabotages, and excavations. Excavations aren't the worst missions, although you may lose a couple drills, but for the capture and sabotage, I always make a point to kill every enemy on the map to allow thralls and hounds time to spawn. You'll go through this same loop on each planet. Collect murmurs to max out your gauge and discover a Requiem mod, which enrages the Lich so they spawn, then testing whether the mods you know are in the right slots. Getting the correct code will finish this stage of the hunt and use one of the 3 uses of each of those Requiem mods. Your Lich or Sister will get progressively stronger after each failed attempt, up to level 5, which is much more dangerous than all the other levels by a wide margin. Being able to test each Requiem mod as it's discovered will give you a nice head start, so hopefully they don't get that high level, but in the end there's so much luck involved that your gear needs to be good enough for level 5. Thankfully, one of the best parts of this system is not only will you get a surplus of Requiem Relics, defeating Liches or Sisters has a chance to drop a Requiem mod called Oull, which counts as a universal Requiem mod and has allowed me to consistently beat them on my 2nd or 3rd try. Technically, you may run out of Oull mods as they have a 25% drop chance from using the right code, and can also potentially be acquired from transmuting 4 spent Requiem mods. But once I got my first few, I literally never ran out of Oulls, and now I have a massive stockpile just like Requiem Relics. When you guess the right code, the Lich or Sister will flee to the Railjack Proxima zones for the final confrontation. When you finish them off, you can kill them to get their weapon, or convert them to add them as an ally and potentially sell them in the Crimson Branch wing of your dojo. Regardless of what you choose, if they have a signature ephemera, you'll always collect it. And for anyone that's trying to farm all the ephemeras, good luck. And as always, thanks for watching. If you're new to Warframe or enjoyed this breakdown, I'm live Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time, so feel free to ask any questions you want live.